All right, welcome back. Today we're getting into something that I think a lot of us have felt but maybe couldn't put into words. We're going to talk about the huge difference between just piling up knowledge in your head and having one of those rare, truly life-changing moments of insight.
You know the feeling, right? You've read all the right books, you've listened to the talks, you totally get the concepts. I mean, your head is just packed with ideas. But then, late at night, when everything's quiet, you're left with this little whisper of a question. Has any of it really changed me?
And that feeling, that's what brings us here, to what I like to call the library of unseen worlds. It's this weird paradox of our time. We have access to literally all the information in the world, but we still feel like we haven't truly seen a thing.
And that is the core of the frustration, isn't it? It's that slow, dawning realization that everything we've read is basically a report of someone else's vision. Somebody else saw something incredible, something real, and they did their absolute best to write it down. But we're just reading the description. We weren't actually there for the main event.
So to really get a grip on this, let's look at an ancient way of framing the problem. It's all about the difference between knowledge and true knowing.
Let's start with this one word, darshana. Now, we usually translate this as philosophy, something you study in a book. But the literal meaning of the word is to see. And that tiny shift, well, it changes everything. It reframes this whole journey, not as an intellectual project, but as a direct, personal experience. A reality to be witnessed, not just read about.
And the Mundaka Upanishad just lays this out perfectly. It talks about two kinds of knowledge. First, you've got aparavidya. That's the lower knowledge. This is all the stuff in books, the Vedas, grammar, rituals, you name it. It's the description of reality. But then there's paravidya, the higher knowledge. And that is the direct experience of reality itself. It's what all those words are pointing to. It's the difference between reading the menu and actually eating the meal.
And here's the kicker, the most amazing part. The texts themselves, the very source of all that lower knowledge, they have a built-in instruction. They're basically shouting, hey, we're just a map. We're a signpost. Use us, learn from us. But for goodness sake, you have to go beyond us to see the place for yourself.
This makes total sense when you stop and think about who wrote these texts in the first place. They weren't just academics sitting in a library. No, they were something else entirely. They were visionaries.
The ancient sages who brought us these texts were called drishta, which literally means seers. They didn't make this stuff up. They didn't create the truth. They saw it. They had a direct vision of how reality works, and then they faced the impossible job of trying to squeeze that infinite vision into a handful of finite words. You could almost say they were reporters from a whole other dimension of consciousness.
Now, if you want the absolute definitive proof that the real vision is in the person doing the seeing, not just in the words on the page, let's look at a fascinating historical example. It involves one of the most famous spiritual texts on the planet. Okay, so our constant, our control variable, is the Bhagavad Gita. Same 700 verses, same words, same conversation. It's been studied and revered for thousands of years. Okay, now check this out. You take two of India's absolute giants, Shankara and Ramanuja. Both lived and breathed the Gita. Shankara reads it, and what does he see? He has this breathtaking vision of Advaita, absolute non-duality, a reality where everything is just one, seamless cosmic ocean. But then Ramanuja studies the exact same verses, and he sees something totally different. He sees Vishishtadvaita, a qualified non-duality, where we are distinct from God but forever connected in a beautiful relationship of love. And it doesn't stop there. Fast forward centuries later, a seer like Sri Aurobindo picks up the same Gita. He sees a roadmap for human evolution, a call to bring a higher, divine consciousness right down into our lives on Earth. One text, three completely different monumental visions.
And that, right there, is the whole point. The magic, the ultimate truth, wasn't hiding in the Sanskrit. It wasn't in the grammar. The vision was unlocked by the consciousness of the person who was looking. The book was the key, but their own soul was the door.
All right, let's bring this idea right down to earth because sometimes the deepest truths are the simplest ones. Let's try a couple of analogies.
Seriously, think about this for a second. Imagine I write the most stunning, poetic, scientifically perfect description of a sunset ever written. I mean, it's a masterpiece. But you're reading it, sitting in a windowless, dark room. Have you actually experienced the sunset? No way, not even close.
Or think about fire. You can read 1,000 pages about the chemistry of combustion. You can become an expert on it. You can know everything about fire. But you don't really know fire until you get close enough to feel its heat on your skin.
One is a description, the other is a direct experience.
So what does all this mean? It means we have to understand what these books and teachings actually are. They're the map, an incredibly valuable detailed map drawn by people who've walked the path. They're a guide. They're a beautiful invitation, but they are not the destination. The whole point of using a map is to actually arrive at the place it's pointing to get to that state of direct knowing, of personal seeing, that's so real and so complete that words just aren't needed anymore. The goal is to get to the place where the words stop and reality begins.
And so that leaves us with this final thought. You know, we spend so much time and energy arguing about whose interpretation is correct. Was Shankara right? Was Ramanuja right? Is it this philosophy or that one? But maybe, just maybe, we're asking the wrong question. The real question isn't whose vision is the right one. The real question is, what have you seen for yourself?